So our final speaker, and then it's going to be over to you for questions, is Paul Wilkinson, Professor of Environmental Epidemiology at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Now, Paul, I think we could say, is perhaps one of life's true interdisciplinary people. He started out in physics. He then became a medic. He then did epidemiological research at the UK National Heart and Lung Institute, and now, with all of this expertise in his back pocket, he focuses his work on the health impacts of global environmental change. So we are lucky to hear him talk to us about how planetary health can be applied to the concept of sustainable urban environments. Paul.
Do I have to advance, or does this... Good. When I first started out in epidemiology, I worked with an epidemiologist that many of you may know, Corbett MacDonald, who said to me one of the first things, never underestimate the value of telling people things they think they already know. And that's what this project is about. I'm going to tell you about a Wellcome Trust-funded project, concentrating on cities, and trying to essentially provide some background evidence which provides a picture of the way, the pattern of city development around the world. And I'm going to concentrate just on two layers of data which are fairly obvious and less controversial, climate and air pollution. But I'll tell you a little bit about the project overall and what we hope it will do to help inform some decisions. Now, none of you need to be reminded of the importance of cities. There's rapid urbanization, already 4.1 billion people live in them. It's the fastest growing part of the global economy, 85% of global economic activity, 75% of greenhouse gas emissions, footprints vastly bigger than their boundaries, as you know. And they're a key target for action, not only because of the concentration of people and resources, but also because of the potential for city-level decision-making and collective action. So the project that I'm going to talk about is called the Sustainable Healthy Urban Environments Project, SHU. And in it, we have drawn a random sample of 250 cities across the world. These are cities greater than 15,000 population, stratified by income, population size, and ecological region, and they're globally representative. We've also added in, at the moment, 69 others, which have been specially chosen because they are cities of interest. But in the graphs I'm going to show later, the random sample ones are the dots, and the open squares are the ones we've added deliberately afterwards. And all of this is about context-setting evidence. It's not so much answering new questions, but trying to provide a picture of the overall pattern of distribution of problems around the world. So these are the cities, the randomly sampled ones, and you can see their global distribution. Unsurprisingly, the circle size is proportional to population, and some of the bigger cities, unsurprisingly, are in China and Asia, but we hope we have a reasonable representation. This is by no means an exhaustive list. We're trying to assemble data from existing data sources around the world. A lot of the databases, but it goes a much longer list in the left-hand side. Some of the organizations that look at urban health in particular in the middle. And on the left-hand side, some of the geographical data which we've assembled, but we're adding to all the time and trying to embellish and add value to some of that data. The world, this is the heat map of where people live, and it's an Asia-centric world. Far less, there is, of course, quite a concentration still in Europe, but it's very much now an Asia world, as we should understand. But where do the data come from? Well, that's very much a Eurocentric world, although, as I'm learning to have to say, a European Union plus a UK-centric world, and where organisations have a presence, but again, it's a Eurocentric world. Now, let's just look at some of the data briefly. So these are climate, first of all. What we've done is try to superimpose global climate models, map them onto the individual cities. This work done in collaboration with the Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia. It uses 15 global climate models for representative concentration pathways of 2.6 and 8.5. I'm going to show you the high one, 8.5, which is closest to current trajectories. And I'm going to show you the values for 2100, the end of the century, just because it shows the greatest spread. And what we've generated are the monthly averages across the ensemble for these climate models. So here's the first graph, and on the The left-hand side is the temperature increase from now until the end of the century in degrees Celsius. Along the bottom axis is what we think the mean temperature for the hottest month will be in 2100, assuming RCP 8.5. So the first thing you see is there is an extraordinary, unless we change course on global warming at the moment, there will be, for some cities of the world, and quite a large fraction of them, temperature increases in excess of 6 Celsius for the hottest month. And that goes above 8 Celsius for one or two cities in the world. The red dots, by the way, are Europe. If you look, although, going the other way, on the right, on the bottom axis towards the right-hand side, those are the cities that are going to end up the hottest. They aren't necessarily the ones which have the highest temperatures at the moment, but they will certainly be hottest at the end. And they're broadly in two groups. The purple dots are South Asia. That includes India, Pakistan, and countries in that region. These are all WHO regions, by the way. And the yellow dots are the ones for the Eastern Mediterranean, so that includes the Middle East. Probably an unfortunate choice of colour, but all the American dots are in green. And I mean this in the nicest possible way, unfortunately not at either extreme. And if they were, it might be a bit more helpful in getting some message across about the importance of tackling climate change. If you look at those who are going to be hottest, unsurprisingly, as I've mentioned already, there are the ones in South Asia, which are problematic, and some of those in the Middle East. But those in the Middle East, as indeed you see there Fort Worth, probably you'd make the conclusion that they could live in a glass bubble and protect themselves against some of the excesses of climate change, the irony being that glass bubble is probably built on oil wealth. If you look at them in relation to their GDP, of course, unsurprisingly, the South Asian ones are the poorest, so we've got GDP per capita on the bottom axis. What about air pollution? This is drawn from the WHO database, and I'm going to show you only the data for 2016 and for PM 2.5, mapped onto the 250 cities in the SHU database. And here is the concentration against the GDP per capita. You can see, of course, those with the very highest concentrations, maybe 5 to 10 times those of a typical European city, for example, are those, again, in Southeast Asia in particular, but also Chinese cities and so on. The outliers are those, Daman is Saudi Arabia, Doha is Qatar. Those are cities, oil wealth cities as well. But of course, a lot of their particle concentration is probably related to sand as well. So it's not all down to petroleum burning. This is just to make the point that air pollution levels are very much interconnected. I'm sorry it's not so easy to read, but what we're trying to demonstrate here is that the concentration of pollution in any cities is dependent not only on your own emissions, but also those of the cities surrounding you. It's an interconnected world, and you cannot tackle the problem alone. And my last slide of the last graph here overlays the hottest month in the future against the PM, to emphasise, lastly, again, the vulnerability in particular of Southeast Asia, which seems to me as a key target. Poor, very likely to experience very uncomfortable temperatures. Remember that 37 Celsius or thereabouts, temperatures above that, this is for a monthly mean, a monthly average, that's going to be above body temperature. And they are also the ones with the very highest concentrations of pollution. So in conclusion, we hope the SHU database is aimed at providing data on a representative sample of cities. And despite constraints on its data quality, we hope it provides increasingly refined assessments of environmental parameters in terms of their variation, which we hope will inform some policy discussions. Thank you very much.